August 23, 2021. Good day all. This is a message from Sierra Victor. We continue with message number 5 of counter-guerrilla operations with FM 90-8/MCRP 333A as reference. The threat. The guerrilla must be understood before he can be defeated. This chapter discusses the characteristics, tactics, and environment of guerrilla operations. The guerrilla is the overt combat element of the insurgent organization. The members of the guerrilla force are organized under military concepts to conduct military and paramilitary operations. Their duties usually include all the overt actions that are conducted by the insurgent organization but may include covert and clandestine operations. Aim and goals. Support overall goal of the insurgent movement. To this end, the guerrilla operates to support the major goal of the insurgent movement to replace the established government. Gain support for insurgent movement. The guerrilla tries to gain support for the insurgent movement through propaganda, coercion, and terror. If he cannot gain active support, then he will seek passive support. Silence on the part of the populace concerning insurgent activities is considered passive support for the insurgent. Increase population's vulnerability. Through the use of selective terrorism, the guerrilla attacks or destroys economic and political symbols upon which the government is founded. Overreaction on the part of government forces or other elements of authority contributes to the population's dissatisfaction with the government and its subsequent support to the insurgency. Lessen government control. By defeating small government forces and striking where government forces are not, the guerrilla adds to the perception that the government cannot or will not provide security for the population and its property. This adds to the perception that the government cannot control the insurgents. Provide psychological victories. To this end, the guerrilla seeks to gain victories that psychologically benefit the insurgent movement, whether or not these victories are significant in terms of material damage to the government or its armed forces. It is the psychological advantage the guerrilla seeks. Tie up government resources. By forcing the government to expend resources on military operations against the guerrilla seeks to tie up resources that could best be utilized by the government in development programs. Weaken resolve of government military forces. By defeating smaller elements of the government's military forces, the guerrilla further weakens the usually limited assets the government has available. He also psychologically weakens the government forces' resolve to continue waging war. Factors. The environment that the guerrilla operates in must be examined from more than a geographical point of view. While terrain and climate are important factors, the political, sociological, and economic aspects of the environment take on added importance. Terrain. The rural guerrilla will prefer to continue to live in his own home. He will go to camps if security does not permit him to live at home. He favors level, well-drained campsites with good water supply, natural fuel, cover, and adequate vegetation to provide concealment from aerial observation. The preferred camps are also chosen with a view toward easy access to the target population, access to a friendly or neutral border, good escape routes, and good observation of approach routes used by government counter-guerrilla forces. When counter-guerrilla operations by government forces force the guerrilla out of his preferred base camps, he tends to establish camps in rugged, inhospitable areas not easily penetrated by government forces. Political factors. The amount of government control in a given area directly impacts on the ability of the guerrilla to operate. The more government control, the less successful are guerrilla activities, whereas less government control of an area improves chances for guerrilla success. The guerrilla will attempt to disrupt normal government functions and destroy key government facilities and personnel to reduce the level of government control in an area. Sociological factors. The more fragmented a society is, the greater the opportunity for dissatisfaction among the populace. The guerrilla will attempt to increase friction between different groups in society. These groups may be aligned along racial, ethnic, religious, or social lines. Language differences or tradition may also be a reason for alignment. Religious influences may play a significant role in the sociological factors that affect the guerrilla. Economic factors. Low standards of living and desires for economic reforms may be popular causes of dissatisfaction with the government. As with political and sociological factors, the greater the degree of dissatisfaction with the government's economic policies, the better the guerrilla's chances for success. The guerrilla seeks to exploit the situation through the use of psychological operations. Since the guerrilla derives a major portion of his logistical support from the local economy, he will normally not disrupt it drastically. Guerrilla forces will destroy a local economy of an area as a lesson to the people living there to exact more support or obedience from them. Impact. The impact that each of the factors has on the guerrilla, and his ability to successfully operate, changes in each situation. A careful analysis by the commander and his staff of each of the factors is necessary to determine what the impact of each is prior to conducting counter-guerrilla operations. In all cases, each factor must be analyzed to determine the peculiarities, weaknesses, and strengths it may have in relation to the guerrilla. In planning for counter-guerrilla operations, the commander exploits disclosed guerrilla weaknesses and deprives the guerrilla, wherever possible, of any opportunities to exploit government weaknesses. By understanding the general characteristics of the guerrilla, it is easier to determine strengths which must be reduced or avoided and weaknesses which can be exploited. The characteristics discussed are general, and the commander planning counter-guerrilla operations must analyze a particular situation to discover how these considerations apply. In our next message we will look at the guerrilla strengths like intelligence, indigenous characteristics, knowledge, motivation, and discipline, limited responsibilities, tactics and physical condition. Also guerrilla weaknesses like limited personnel and resources, individual factors, and operational factors. Due to WhatsApp audio note length, we do our messages in ±8 minute segments to have full impact. Please visit our Dropbox account for all our previous material. Links can be obtained from any admin on the Sierra Victor groups. Thank you for listening or reading this message. Please feel free to use and distribute as needed. Our messages are not by any means enticing you to a revolution of sorts, but rather to equip you with the necessary theoretical background in order to assist local armed forces or police in stabilizing a SHTF situation. We wish you well. Sierra Victor.